You're watching France24, and it's time now for our daily look at the international press. Eve Irving joins me in the studio. Good morning, Eve. Let's start in Spain, where record-breaking verdicts could be passed today, record-breaking sentences, rather, could be passed today on the Madrid train bombers. What does the Spanish press make of it?
Well, unsurprisingly, for the second day in a row, Catherine, this story is taking over the Spanish press. El País runs a fairly factual article going into what we know and what we don't know, saying, the sureties about the sentencing and the doubts that remain. They go into, after the attack, there was a lot of speculation that ETA was involved, and after we knew that they weren't the perpetrators of the attack, a lot of people said, well, maybe they supplied the explosives. So El País says, well, now we know no, it was two Spaniards, one that worked for mines, that stole the explosives and then sold them on for drugs, and they go into details like this. El Mundo, Spain's second largest selling daily paper in Spain, also covers it with a special report, and they show us a little picture of what the courtroom will look like today, noting that 18 out of the 28 accused will sit behind what is being called a bulletproof aquarium, so showing the kind of tensions that will surround this sentencing. Also, the 49 or so lawyers from both the defence and the prosecution will sit together on one bench, and they note certain figures like there's over 400 witnesses went through in this trial, and about 100 experts as well.
Well, leaving Spain now for Russia, who's waving the flag for Vladimir Putin?
Well, we've seen rallies of support out for President Vladimir Putin in recent weeks, calling for him to run for a third term in office, which would be against the constitution as it now stands. But in an article in The Guardian this morning, the British newspaper, they say that they've seen documents that people were being forced to go out and take part in these rallies, particularly students and rail workers. They got memos from their employers saying, you must go out, we need so many people on the streets. Now, whether this came from local bureaucrats wanting to make the Kremlin happy on the run-up to the elections in March remains to be seen. It could also, this article says, it could be advisors close to Putin that want him to remain in power and so wanted to get the momentum up for him to run again.
Right, well, he's already promised that he might be Prime Minister, so, I mean, somehow or other he's going to remain on the scene, isn't he?
Yeah,
well,
like it.
Let's move on to the United States now, and you would have thought that Hurricane Katrina would have been the biggest mess that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, could have got itself into, but apparently not.
Well, they were, with the fires in California that we've seen recently, they were really trying to show how they've changed and learned from their mistakes, but they've made yet again another mistake. Last Tuesday, they staged a press conference, only there was no journalist or press at the conference.
It's probably easier like that, isn't it? You don't get any annoying questions.
Thing. There was actually members from the agency that asked quite a series of fairly easy questions to the press officer there. Now, he says he has been fired since because of the controversy, but he says he didn't know there were no reporters in the room, and of course if he had known, he'd have called the whole thing off. This article is in the New York Times today, and apparently it became about because the journalists only got 15 minutes notice about the conference, and that's why there were no actual journalists there. In the New York Times, you can also see a memo, an internal memo in the agency, where the head of the agency does condemn it and says it's awful, but says, this is an agency, it's not irreparable, and this is an agency that does indeed learn from its mistakes.
Well, maybe or maybe not. Well, thank you very much indeed, Eve Irving, for that review of today's international press. Stay tuned to France 24.